Avengers Tech On Issue 1 sees the Avengers battling Thanos on the moon, but their combined strength almost wasn't enough thanks to the power of the Infinity Stones the Mad Titan wielded. But even in their darkest hour, the Avengers never gave up. Soon they were able to remove the gauntlet from Thanos' hand, destroying the stones, as in the present, Captain America says that now they have time to reflect on those lost and the lessons they learned. Steve says that the world is safe, but they cannot forget those who paid the ultimate price, since their sacrifice deserves their vigilance, so evil can never threaten the world again. Wolverine knows that's a heck of a speech, and Peter knows that's what Cap does. MJ says he's looking good for a man who's over 100 years old as Peter's spider sense triggers. Cap continues his speech, wanting to lift one another up, and it's why the Avengers endure, because together they confront threats that no individual can face on their own. Friday contacts Tony, telling him there is a massive energy reading from his location as Peter's spider sense goes into overdrive. The Avengers Tower explodes above them, forcing the heroes into action as they catch the rubble and prevent the people at the ceremony from being killed. Steve asks who could have done this as he is blasted back by the super-powered Red Skull, who says that their ideals are so fragile. Wolverine thinks he just made a big mistake as Red Skull knows mistakes are no longer his concern. Spider-Man stops his monologuing with some webbing to the face, telling him that they're on a tight schedule and he's got to cut his speech short. Red Skull blasts the hero back as he tells his soldiers of Orochi to attack, saying they have weapons unlike anything the heroes have ever seen and they will turn their guests into creatures under his control. Captain America attacks with Wolverine, but while Cap blocks his oncoming energy blast, Skull grabs Wolverine, hoping that they recognize the energy since he now wields the power of the Infinity Stones. He smashes Wolverine into the ground hard, blasting Iron Man as he says that the stones are gone, but even their dust left behind in their wake has vast potential. He says that he calls them Infinity Mirror Shards, or IMS for short. He knows that he cannot wipe out the universe like Thanos did, but he can still do so much, like take all of the heroes' powers. Across the world, heroes like the Thing, Storm, and Miss Marvel have their powers taken. As Captain Marvel falls from the sky, Spider-Man is left without his spider powers, and Captain America is left without his super soldier serum, reverting him back into the sickly Steve he once was. Red Skull says that instead of turning him to dust, he thinks it's more satisfying that he's humiliated before he destroys Captain America. Suddenly, Black Panther appears and attacks, knowing that while the heart-shaped herb's power is fading, he will not yield, and Wakanda's vibranium still holds strong, and they can still win this. Red Skull knows that he will do nothing, unleashing fire on the hero, saying that his weapons are impressive, but now he wields a piece of infinity itself. T'Challa erects a shield, knowing that it won't stop Red Skull forever, but it will enable them to escape. Shuri ferries the heroes onto one of their Wakandan ships as the soldiers say that they are getting away. Red Skull is very well aware of that, knowing that he would prefer to slay them in front of the Grand Tower to their egos, but it doesn't matter since he has all he needs to conquer Earth and in time, reality itself. Later on, the heroes regroup at Stark West, with Tony knowing that he'd built defenses and redundancies of all sorts in that tower, and Red Skull just walked right over them, and now every hero on Earth has lost their powers, and they ran away with their tails between their legs. Steve tells him not to blame himself, but Tony does, since what's the point of being the smartest person if Red Skull can just snap his fingers and change the rules? Spider-Man asks in regards to smart people, did they recruit Rita Richards, but Tony sarcastically laughs it off. Carol tells him to stop fighting, and Tony says he just needs to figure out what the rules of the new game are. He wants to run some tests on the energy that hit his armor and figure out what it is, but Steve already knows, telling him that Red Skull told him in the heat of the battle that it's stray dust that he gathered from the Infinity Stones. Tony knows it's more than enough to shift reality in his favor, as Spider-Man says he found a disc that Red Skull's suit ejected when he used the energy. Tony knows he could analyze the disc for any energy readings, but Peter tells him to stop, since he's a scientist as well and not a kid like Tony thinks, so he wants to be part of this. MJ is worried about Peter now not having his powers, but Peter knows that won't stop him from doing what is right, and maybe he can even the odds. The heroes go to see Wolverine, who has been put in a coma because he no longer has his healing factor, meaning that he can't function properly with the adamantium fused to his bones. T'Challa asks what his chances are, but Shuri knows if things don't change, they'll have to remove the metal in surgery, and that's a scenario where the odds of survival are less than 10%. T'Challa knows if he made it to New York sooner, he could have stopped this, but Steve says he did what he could, wondering what prompted him to come to New York in the first place. T'Challa says that the Wakandan satellite array picked up a strange energy reading, and when he tried to contact the Avengers, he found the communications were jammed, so fearing the worst, he brought Shuri and a strike force with him. Carol asks if the readings can be tracked to find where Red Skull is now, and Shuri is way ahead of her, having found he is near Tokyo. T'Challa wants to go to Japan, but Steve is in no physical condition to fight, but the hero refuses to step down. Carol backs up T'Challa, but Steve says that no one of them can go it alone, and they couldn't before and they can't do it now. He knows that SHIELD isn't an option, and he has to call in some favors with the military. Later on at the JSDF headquarters, Steve meets with the Japanese and American generals, who wish this was under better circumstances. The men say according to data sent from Wakanda, they have been able to locate Red Skull's location in a facility he is using to gather Infinity Shards in. They know they need to stop him and capture that technology, and Steve says that if they use a large assault force, he will turn them into monsters under his control, so this needs to be covert. He knows himself, King T'Challa, and Colonel Danvers will lead a small assault group on Red Skull, telling the generals before Carol can stop him that they are all in on this. After the meeting, Carol says that Steve is a brilliant leader and tactician, but in his current state he can't lead the assault, but Steve says that Red Skull and he have fought over the decades and he can't stay on the sidelines for this. Later that night, the Avengers infiltrate the facility, but they find it empty. Suddenly, a portal opens up and Red Skull and his monsters appear, asking if Steve really thought he could attack him and not think that Red Skull would be prepared. Carol opens fire with her energy rifle, telling her men to stand their ground. Red Skull tells the heroes that no one will escape this time, as Black Panther knows the monsters he makes are formidable, but the force of their attacks can be used against them. He unleashes the stored up kinetic energy in his suit on the monsters, knocking them all back as Red Skull slams into T'Challa, taking him down and telling the hero he still owes him for his interference in New York. Carol fires on the villain, who knows that without her Kree-born powers, she is merely just a soldier, and soldiers are kindling to the flames of war. He begins ripping up Black Panther's suit as he asks T'Challa if they'll celebrate the throne he left empty as he played hero instead of a ruler. Steve interrupts his monologuing with a shield bash to the face, wondering if he forgot about him. Red Skull says he didn't, he wanted to save Steve for the end of the glorious massacre. He unleashes an energy beam on the hero, knowing if he wants to die, he'll happily oblige him. Suddenly, a heavy metal panel lands between him and the energy beam, stopping the blast in its tracks as Iron Man and the other heroes arrive, saying that Tony Stark has saved the day. He tells the heroes that if Red Skull is going to take away their powers, then the least he could do is even the odds, and with his brilliant brain, he has. Steve, Carol, and T'Challa are all covered in a custom-made battlesuit as Red Skull wonders if they think their tin-plated technology can save them. The Avengers, now decked out in a high-tech armor, know that they can and will, since now they are the Iron Avengers. The